So you read the passages from C.S. Lewis, right? This is the C.S. Lewis of Narnia Chronicles fame, who was a very fine scholar. Now, I have you reading a bunch of Lewis because I want you to see somebody who's well-educated, thoughtful, with a deep sense of history and just smart guy, who is a believer in religion, who takes religious ideas seriously, intellectually seriously, in a scientific age. So I want both sides to just see that there is a way of talking intelligently, which doesn't mean that Lewis is right, but he talks intelligently about what he believes. I hope the moral law is a real part of the universe, as opposed to being just something in my head. That's very interesting to me. This is not at all the results we got last quarter. Okay, and then some of you may think, yeah, but it probably isn't real. And others of you may think, yeah, it probably is. Yeah, that becomes a much tougher question, right? I perceive it. I can't see the universe without seeing right and wrong. I mean, can you? Can any of you see the universe without perceiving right and wrong? Somebody walking down the sidewalk just takes a brick to the head of an 8-year-old walking by, and you don't think, my gosh, that was wrong, right? We experience some things as contemptible and others as awe-inspiring. And he wants to say this thing we're perceiving, this good and right, it's a real feature of the universe. It's really there. That's why we're perceiving it. You can see where this is going to go, that this is a basis for a kind of religious thinking. Lewis takes our own human experience about the struggle that we feel as we're pulled towards this and pulled towards that, and the sense that he at any rate had that some of the things he was pulled towards would be easier, but just not right. You've been in situations like that, right? Lewis wants to say we really need to think very hard about that. That's serious evidence about what it means for a human to live in the universe. And there are various ways to interpret it, but he says you've got to take it very seriously. And he himself takes it at something like face value, that when we perceive that something is good or something is evil in the universe, that's because there really is good and evil in the universe, or good or absence of good in the universe. Okay, now I want to shift over to the abolition of man. You remember the story about Coleridge at the waterfall, this anecdote that's taken from the Green Book. And Coleridge says of the waterfall, or here's the person say of the waterfall, that is sublime. And Coleridge says, that's exactly what it is, sublime. And then some other tourist there says, yes, it is very pretty. And Coleridge says, no, it's not pretty. So here are a couple of questions from that. Coleridge was probably right. The waterfall was sublime. Oh, good. Nice range there. Yeah. If I were to call a waterfall sublime, I might really mean to say something about the waterfall. What did Gaius and Titius say you would be talking about? Your own feelings. Yeah, you might really want to say something about the quality of that particular waterfall. We've got a difficult dialogue going on. Gaius and Titius say that Coleridge is being silly and failing to recognize that it doesn't really make any difference whether we call the waterfall sublime or pretty. It's just talking about how we feel, right? That the waterfall itself is neither sublime nor pretty, but just we're talking about our own feelings. What's one approach to getting into that? How would you go about it, this difference between sublime and pretty?
Well, neither of those words describe it. What word would describe it? Like, the
And that's just the way Gaius and Titius would want you to do it. They would want you to demonstrate factually this, in what way this was an outstanding waterfall. And so what you're saying is that by extension, they're actually forbidding us to make any statement of quality. And that's what Lewis observes in it and why he detests the statement so much and thinks it's so dangerous. Well, one way I would go about this is I would, remember we did this business of looking things up in the OED? And what you're going to find about sublime is that it has to do, it's a vertical image. It's something way up. This same impulse, same sort of metaphor that we saw in Plato, that evil is down on earth and one should aim to get up with God. Sublime is used to describe things that are of the highest quality and that could be associated with the divine. Right? They're kind of up there close to what God is like, something like that. Whereas pretty means that something is manufactured rather nicely or is pleasing to the senses. It seems to me that in our society, probably our sense of pretty is well indulged, and our sense of awe, of standing in the presence of something bigger than we are, that somehow deserves profound respect, that's somehow lacking.
Just because you have all these impulses doesn't mean that the ultimate good still isn't there somewhere. That's the real trick, is discerning what is the good telling me to do at this point.
Because this guy who was talking to me in my office, but what really was disturbing him, just kind of freaking him out, frankly, was the fact that he was very gung-ho military. Up to this moment, he really embraced the values of that and how important it was to follow command, and he didn't necessarily have any conflict about this before. And he wasn't religious. He wasn't brought up in any religious household. He didn't necessarily have a belief in God or anything. And then all of a sudden he has this sense that this is the morally wrong thing for him to have done, and he's like tormented by the sense that he's done wrong. And he doesn't know where this sense came from. So what do you think you would say to him if he said this? Where did this sense of good come from? Why do I have this feeling that this was wrong?
I think that would just be culture. Think about like a suicide bomber. They believe they're completely right. That's the right thing. They're doing the moral thing by being a suicide bomber. I think it's culture.
Make it right. They think it's right.
A month ago, I would have agreed with you. This is my only problem with the idea that it's right because a culture teaches it's right or a culture thinks it's right. That can very easily break down into it's right because you think it's right.
People like who are raised in like these like hateful, like racist, just bad families, and they turn out they're great people. I mean, you really can't. There's going to be conflict there.
I do think that there is some sort of universal standard. I do think there are things that by and large people, cultures as a whole, consider really not acceptable.
But the problem with complete relativism is, let's look at an instance such as Nazi Germany. What gives us the right to go to war with him if his culture is just as right as our culture?
If there really is relativism, if really good is only defined by the culture, then we can't even tell each other we're wrong. That doesn't even make any sense. We have no right to judge anybody else because they have, and it would be hard to live in a world like that. Because if you suddenly get captured by somebody from one of these other cultures and they're torturing you, you wouldn't have any right to say, hey, you're doing the wrong thing to me.
It's a very idealistic argument, and I just don't think it's something we'll ever come to a conclusion.
Maybe it's in like layers. There might be some kind of general human sense, and then there's like the cultural sense, and then you get down to like the individual.
There are different layers, you're absolutely right. But the bottom layer, he would call the ultimate good. Let's just call it the law of human nature, right? And then he said there's a cultural thing and then the individual.